Hello, and welcome to the Come Up. My name is Nick, and I am super excited to speak to my guest today. He is an artist, an actor, a director, an activist. He has created the Black Theater Matters Bill, which is an incredible feat. It's like a real bill, y'all. Like, y'all can go and read it. Many articles, sections, like, I advise you to like read it and take some time to really comb through it. Here he is, Davon Williams. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm good, Nick. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy we finally got here. We have both gone back and forth with various things like stop. I mean, in the pandemic, everyone's become an online superstar. So you have a show as well. Talk to us about the receipts. Like, where did the show come from?
Oh yeah. So in 2019, I had just moved to New York. I am an international performer. I got to go to Hong Kong, Philippines, Los Angeles, Philadelphia. I've had a very good run, mostly in my 20s. I moved to New York. I booked a job in Western Vermont. Our show opens July 20th. July 21st is my birthday, so I'm turning up on that stage.
Oh, July 9th.
Oh, come on,
See?
Cancer.
Yep,
Cancer.
Cancer.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, you're more in the middle, right?
Yes, I'm right in the middle. I'm a very broken person.
Thank you. My first two relationships were both early cancers. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Broken glass. Broken glass.
Very broken people.
So yeah, July 21st was my birthday, turning it up. July 22nd was a Monday. That's our equity day off. And for people that don't know, when you're in the Actors Union for theater, Mondays are normally designated as your day off. Sometimes it's Sundays, but traditionally it's been Mondays because that's the time when most people go back to work. They ain't trying to see a show. So that's the logic behind it. So my co-workers, the people I was sharing the stage with, were like, come on, let's celebrate. We're going to meet you there. And I went, you know what? The theater has a bicycle. I'm going to get on that bicycle, spend a little bit of time by myself. I'm flying down the sidewalk, actually. I get into the crosswalk, and this Mack truck driver who's not paying attention, texting, turns and knocks me while I'm on this bicycle. Turns out the bicycle didn't even have brakes. Theater gave us a faulty bike. So I get slammed. And if it wasn't for a random like stunt class, I would have been under that truck dead.
Wow.
Gone. It's over.
Wow.
So I'm under this. I've tuck and roll. I take a lot of the impact, but I'm like, it's okay. I'm in the hospital, the ER for like majority of that day. The very next day, I'm like, put me on the stage, because at this point, I'm like, we're a family. We're gonna get through it.
Yeah.
Let's do this. I finish the contract. I get back to New York, which I'm still new to. It hasn't even been a full year. And I'm like, God, I can't sleep at night. My shoulders feel real funny. Everything feels like really odd. I go to a doctor. They're like, what the have you been doing? Like, what have you been doing? And I was like, nothing. I just got back to New York. Oh yeah, I was hit by a truck. And they were like, what? So they're telling me, I'm telling them the story. And they're like, you got to stop everything you're doing. You have to stop everything you're doing. Like, sit down or you're going to have permanent damage. So I was like, I can't. I just moved to New York. I'm here to break Broadway. Like, these are the most important times. Like, I cannot mess up this motion. Mind you, my co-stars moving to Broadway to do West Side Story. Everyone's moving and going. And I'm like, I can't get off this hill. Like, my goal is to get this and go back to Los Angeles. So I give in and I go, you know what? I'm going to have several seats. And take it easy. I come back. Now, mind you, in between that break, I reach out to Actors Equity and I go, hey, I got messed up by a defaulted bike. To this day, they've done nothing about it. They've done nothing to help and advocate for me.
Wow.
So I was
and
like,
that was an equity contract you were on.
Equity contract for the union. I was the lead in the show.
Wow.
I was the lead. So I go, strike one. I go in for an audition. I'm noticing that I'm having muscle spasms. It's the final callback for a show, a Broadway show. So under a year, I would have been on Broadway, except this guy goes, can you please stop doing that Twitch thing? Can you stop doing that? Like all that. And I'm like, so we tell him what happens. And he goes, so are you a liability? And I go, I'm not getting this job. I'm not getting this. Like, I could literally levitate right now, but because I look like damaged goods, broken glass, early July cancers, I'm not. Just brought it right back.
Just bring it back. Just remind me of my pain. That's great.
So I'm like, oh, well, that's gone. So then I finally get to a place where I can start aggressively auditioning again. It is around February, March. You know where this story is going.
No!
The entire world.
Why do all stories end there? Like, you know what's crazy? Like 2019 was a crazy year of change for me too. Like so much happened and I feel like everyone was at this place. Like you were literally at this place where you were like, yes, like I'm ready. Like I feel like everyone was there and that is rude.
It's like, rude.
Rude. Anyway. Rude.
Karma is rude. She's rude.
She's very rude.
So that was, I was like, ooh, strike two. So then strike three came when we're all sitting around. Again, they've done nothing for me, but it's election time for Actors Equity Association. Mm-hmm. In my DMs, people are telling me about like this guy being racist and you need to be active for your union. I was like, what did the union do for me? Mm-hmm. So then I go, I'll do you one better. I start investigating. I'm going into these unofficial Facebook groups and talking and doing all this and being like, well, who is this guy? This guy actually comes directly to me with this long story being like, it's a smear campaign and all that. And I'm looking at him like, but you did do these racist tweets. This don't make no sense. So I go to his Facebook page and I see that there are BIPOC people defending him, Black people. There was this Filipino woman, just all these people. And I'm like, something's not adding up here. Like that's not normal behavior for someone that's a racist. You don't see this kind of behavior. So I go, well, if you're bad and bougie, are you going to do this interview? I'll interview you straight up and we can put it all out in the air. I'll do the research. I just want to know because this is something I've never seen before. Right. So he goes, okay. That's how he speaks. Okay. He talks like that. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'll do it. So we do the interview, and he knows that, like, I respect him, but like that voice, I have to recognize that voice any chance I get. So we're doing this interview, and before then I was doing this research and I was looking around. And I was like, none of this makes. He might be right. We might be being race baited to vote for these other people. Yeah, and it's weird because like on his merit alone, it's very hard for me to say if he would have won that election or not. Mm. So I think that the race baiting was just too much. So we look at it, I'm able to connect the dots and I go, okay, that's interesting. That was the first episode of the receipts. Now, so I go, well, now that this episode's done, I have more questions. So then I go, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get all these Black actors and actresses to come on my show and talk about how their bodies were misused in traditional spaces as artists. I go, okay, I'll get the president of AEA and I'll get the person that's running against her. And they'll come on the stage, they'll be completely quiet in a form of solidarity and let these people speak. The president had no time for me. She still has no time for me when it comes to that show. But her opponent said yes. So I was like, I'll take it. So the poster's made, everything's drawn up. And now this vice president named Melissa Robinette, who still may or may not been the core of why all this happened between her and Mark, goes into people's messages on Facebook group and go, you got to delete that poster. You got to delete that poster because it's biased and it's messing up the campaign. And I go, that's interesting. And they actually ended up taking the poster down. So to me, that was a silence in a Black voices. So I research her and I find that the vice president has a history of this, Tony Award-winning actress Tanya Pinkins ran for VP. A wonderful actor by the name of Francis Chu ran for VP. He's an Asian man. She's a Black woman. And this white woman decides, who I like to call civil rights leader Mel Robb, decided to run against these BIPOC people, yet her entire platform is we need more BIPOC people. It just blew my mind. So then the behavior started getting weird. And then I started getting messages from people being like, oh yeah, she emailed me this one time. And it's worse than stuff Mark Richard Taylor said. That's the guy who I did the first interview with. Yeah. And I'm like, this is phony. So I sit down and I go, well, how do I address this? Because right now my issue is with this theater, but just like any good video game, you need a side mission. So I go, my issue is with the theater because they remain silent. However, my union remains silent. I'm going to take on this union and address them about accountability. So I do 10 episodes talking about all, like pretty much laying out how the business works. And then episode 8, I break down the drama that is this election, in which I unveil bullying, just all these facts. And I pull out these this panel of Black experts, a lawyer who worked for the NAACP, Black Girl Theater Magic, Tanya Pinkett, Sony Award winner. I pull out a NASA scientist and a judge, and we just go for it. I'm like, let me just bring some context and just really lay this out. And then the 10th episode, we got the president of SAG AFTRA and the national executive director, David White, a Black man. And they pretty much came on, and I wanted them because I knew there was an issue with SAG AFTRA. That's the movie actors union. And there was an issue with AEA, the theater, about jurisdiction. So I was like, well, if I can break this news early, I think I'll be able to get a little bit of leverage, which I do. In August, David White lays out exactly what the deal's going to be between the two unions way before the feud was finished by November 13. So all of that is months in which actors could have been working. But AEA held that up, and not only held it up, but the president then started trying to weaponize BIPOC faces and artists in the community by going, what SAG-AFTRA is doing disenfranchises the BIPOC community. That's not true. And also it's weird because only one of the unions, which I'm a member of both, only one of these unions has a BIPOC executive director.
Yeah.
And that's huge for a lot of unions. It's something you rarely see. So for me, I took that personally because it's like, well, what are you trying to say? Here I am, a Black man. Here he is, a Black man. And here I see a white woman once again trying to throw a dark-skinned Black man under the bus. It doesn't sit well with me, regardless of what beauty pageants you've won. It did not sit well with me. And it made me very, very uncomfortable. So this is now for me strike 3. And I go, I'm going fully in. I want to run for this. So season 1 of The Receipts was really me just coming into my own and deciding if I really wanted to do this fight. So then I decided to run for delegate, and I go, you know what? I'm going to do a Black Theater Matters bill. It's kind of what the cliffhanger of episode 1 was. Yeah. And I wrote it out. I did all this surveying. I talked to a bunch of members. Over 450 people put their hands someplace on this bill. Mm-hmm. And now it's developed. It's beautiful. We're campaigning it. Season 2 is laying the case for this bill, and it's been overall well received. So I'm interested to see how it goes. And essentially, if season 1 was all about like what's going on, season 2 is definitely the Marvel universe. I could be like, oh, it's WandaVision. I'm coming in. And what's happening is there is going to be a twist. And you'll see, what is it? This upcoming episode is about a lawsuit. There was a guy who sued the union, and for all intents and purposes, he kind of won. He won against the union. Wow. And now it's kind of one of those other puzzle pieces that you put in, and everyone's like, well, I think season 2 is very interesting because you're learning a lot, and it's also you're learning a lot, and it's also very funny. You're getting people like Broadway stars like James Snyder, Antoine Smith. You're getting union heads. You're getting people who are celebrity adjacent, as I like to say. They're right there. And you'll see as it rolls out where it's going, but no one's going to see it until that final flip. And then you're going to go, oh my God, the stakes have gotten so high for what's going on. So that's essentially what's happening is we're just laying the groundwork so people can follow along, they can get caught up, and then we are going to ramp it into this convention. I am so excited.
This is amazing. What I love about this is that, for the first time in a long time, the pandemic allowed people to see artists as people. And what I love about your show is that you are not only putting faces to people, but you are talking about like the issues that we're having within the institution that we've created. That further doesn't see artists as people, that sees artists as numbers, and sees artists as I don't know sometimes actually what we see artists as, but so yes, thank you for bringing the receipts. It's good. Accountability is good. We're having so many conversations about accountability and what that looks like, and your show is what that looks like.
Thank you.
And it's also in this bill. So you touched on it a little bit. But it really is an incredible and an intricate. It touches every corner of the process. It touches every letter in the BIPOC. Tell us a little bit more about why why it was important for you not to just continue to advocate for this, but to create this extensive bill and to work with those 450 people to make sure that it was right.
For me, it's important just because I was blessed while I was working in Philadelphia and a couple of other places to work in politics somehow. I got to work as a writer for some. I got to work as in the strategist department, but it was funny when I worked with Republicans, they needed me for my skin. And then when I was working with Democrats, they needed me for my age. It was very interesting to see
Yeah.
how I was perceived and how I was used. And that went on to help me work at the Philadelphia school district and things of the like. So all that experience taught me that if you want to introduce something or if you want to change it, you have to propose the model. So what happens a lot in governance is that someone will be like, I want to change this one thing, or they'll make it very selfish. But what you really have to do if you want to make serious change when it comes to legislation is that you have to figure out, well, if I do this, what happens after? Then what happens after that? And if I include this, so all of it is one big working part. And afterwards, I looked up and I was like, this is a pretty big bill. We have a lot of problems. Hopefully this solves it. So that's essentially how it happened. It was just, I read the entire constitution of the Actors Equity Association, the constitution of SAG AFTRA for reference. I read the entire constitution of the AFL-CIO. That's our parent union organization.
Mm-hmm.
I even did the NFLA, which is the National Football League Association, which is their union, which is our brother-sister union. We also have some brother-sister unions that are representing police officers. Awkward.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did all that research. Then I started doing ERISA, which pretty much talks about like the Equity League and healthcare. And it was a lot. I'm looking at the books now, a lot of nerding out, which under any other, if it wasn't a pandemic, I don't know if it would have got done. So sometimes there's blessings in disguise. Mm-hmm. But again, it brings me back to that accident, which I personally always ask myself, why me? Like, again, that was over a decade ago. One time I learned that trick. So that means overall, something that I did for probably 5 minutes, learned that trick in 5 minutes, saved my life.
Yeah.
So I no longer believe in coincidences. I think there are things at work. I think there is a purpose, because by all intents and purposes, by my own personal account, I should have been dead. So for me, that's kind of the fire behind why I'm doing this, because I've always wanted to be someone of service. Like when I went into acting, it's never been about like the follows or anything like that. It's always been about like, if I do this project, what happens in that community? And that's kind of where my work has been. Even when I got hit by that truck in the West End, I was very big then about education. So I wanted to be part of their education department. I was going into the community at these bars and singing and using, just really trying to make sure that I'm using my art to engage. So this, to me, is no different. This bill is all about creating an equitable space for BIPOC members, LGBTQ, religion, people of political parties. Like, again, figuring out how to unify and get all of us to live peacefully under the umbrella of what is pretty much kind of a broken system, the more I learn about actors' equity. And also, this is a spending bill. Right now, figuring out how to better use our funds. Again, it's also a financial stabilizer, and the idea that I'm proposing things that's not only going to help generate more jobs, but also put actors' equity back in the black in a more responsible way, and put in stopgaps. So if we're ever in this situation again, we aren't hit as hard, which is real important. I've read so many economic books. Can you see that?
Yes.
Bruh, anywhere I reach, I can pull an economics book, man. I've learned so much about the economy. Like, I feel like a full-on nerd. But yeah, that's what you have to do. If you're going to be about it, be about it. And I felt like I can't come into actors' equity blowing up the spot with this little rinky-dink show that I had off the whim and then be like, okay, figure it out. Bye, guys. Because as I'm learning, it wouldn't have got done.
It wouldn't get done. There's a lot of conversation about how to and not really much conversation about what to be doing instead of talking about how to do it. So money where the mouth is. You're one of those people where like, I'm not even sure how we became friends on Facebook, but like we are, and I'm super like happy about it because like clearly you are an active voice in the community. I'm a very active voice in the community. Like, so I think that, I don't know, Facebook just told us we should be friends, and so it happened. And so, I was looking at a post popped up one day where you said that a friend of yours had left a voicemail that was like, hey girl, like you're clearly doing too much like activism. Like you got here to act, not to like change the world. So like stop that. And you were like, oh, maybe I should. And like most of the post was like, girl, what they talking about? Like, this is the work right now. This is what it looks like. And I was in that camp where I was like, because I mean, for a lot of us, before I got the job I'm currently in, they were like, you say a lot on the internet. And I was like, yes, I do say a lot on the internet. And I'll probably continue to say a lot on the internet. But that saying a lot on the internet was like getting me work. Like, it was like, like pushing something forward. It was also like, it became the work because everything was closed and y'all was tripping. So like, talk to us more about like using your art as activism and being an activist through your art and like how that brought you to this build. Like the mix of your brain in governance and your brain in art is what made you not only care about this but also I think shape the way that you cultivated it. Like there's something so like organic and ensemble and like creative about talking to 450 people, and then using a show to advocate for the bill like in a strategic way, like that entertainers know how to do it all, so like speak on it.
Yeah. Ugh. So before this, I feel like very art activism when I was in Philadelphia, just getting out of school. I didn't want to be an actor. I wanted to use my art in curriculums. When I was younger, I learned to read because a teaching artist came to our school, and that's how I got into it, because I didn't understand much of the concepts being taught. And the teachers, God bless them, wonderful people, didn't know how to teach outside of their comfort zone. So that was huge when this teaching artist came in and changed my life. So that's what I wanted to be. So I went to art school. I built these curriculums. I did an independent study. I come out and working for places like the Philly Young Playwrights, the Wilma Theater, the Walnut Street Theater, which is one of the biggest, grandest theaters. I'm doing so much of that work. I'm going into schools. I think I hit around like 250. We're gonna have to do that count again. I know I hit over 250 classes, but we got, yeah. So the schools have to be lower. I should probably figure that out. But I did a lot of classes, hit a lot of students, and was pretty much just making sure that we use it. And grades were going up by 30%. There was a school that had a huge race issue. They brought me in on that. At the time, Mayor Nutter even came in because we were doing so well to like salute the work we had been doing. And then the Philadelphia School District got these $1 million grants for these art centers that they were creating, and they put me on as a theater director. So I was like, this is huge for someone in their early 20s. I love it. And on top of that, I was hanging out with a friend who ended up they were a celebrity. I had met them at an audition. They were in a very dark place, just dealing with fame and being a child star, and they ended up killing themselves. And I was like, I really don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, I was having personal career issues because when I was doing my work, when I could get a contract, of course, they will always try to underbid me because I'm younger and I knew what the costs were. So I would have to fight so hard to get paid what I was owed. And then these celebrities would come out of nowhere who didn't know. I want to use the S word for lack of a better term, but they didn't know anything about like being a teaching artist. They knew how to be a celebrity in a school environment, which is not helpful.
No, it's
so
not.
I kind of would look at that and be like, so this is why you couldn't pay me that extra $100,
right?
This is what this
so they
is
could
about?
stand there and be like, hey, it's me.
Hey, it's me. Pay me $5,000 to $10,000.
Here I am. I'm standing. Is that good?
Here, take pictures. I'm real. So I rolled my eyes so hard. And one time I was with students, and I do this thing where I let the students talk among themselves just as a form of assessment. So we're not forcing on them what did they learn. And when they come out and they go, hey, can Mr. Davon come talk to us? And I was like, oh no, I done messed up. They're about to tell me about myself. So I sit in there and they go, so you act? And I was like, yeah, sometimes I'll do a little show here and there. And they were like, no, you act. Like, you're really good. We saw your stuff. We saw all this. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I'm not really talking about it. And they were like, so-and-so saw your theater show and said you was the best part. And I was like, thank you. And they're like, so why don't you act? Everyone around you is in their 50s and 60s. And you're like our age. You're technically our age. And I was like, I am pretty close in age to you all. They're like letting them talk. Right. And I was like, good point. So I go to my mentors, and before I can even finish the sentence, I was like, so the students I was just teaching said that I should go act. Yes, you should go act. You should go do that. So in my head, I'm like, well, if I really go out here, I rake up some of these credits and come back, it will be easier for me to do my job.
Yep.
So I'm going to LA. Let's see what happens. I go there. Now, before that, I had done some data mining, really like figured out what people were going through. And I created a strategic plan for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I go, okay, I'm going to stop being a nerd. I'm going to stop writing for people a little bit. I'm going to get out of this. And I'm just going to go full-fledged acting. In 3 months, I got 3 national commercials, got myself a film, a couple of TV show spots. I think all my stuff, Netflix, Amazon Prime. There's an Asian program, VIU, I think it is, VIU TV. And all the pretty much major platforms that stream, I'm on them now. So that's essentially what LA did to me. I became SAG AFTRA. I joined both of the unions. I got to work with Broadway stars like Betty Buckley, Rachel York, Dawn Lewis. Dawn Lewis
Yes.
from like a different world is my friend.
That's
like
awesome.
That's the part that blows my mind because she's such a host. Like that is someone to aspire to be. And in meeting her, because sometimes I get nervous. Like when you meet people, you be like, I don't know. Like they're not who I thought they were, but she is everything and more. Like everything and more. So that was one of the greatest blessings. Got to meet people like Angela Bassett and talk and like really pick their brains. There's this video that went viral when Center Theater Group asked me to host their opening night party for my Black Bottom. So I'm talking to Lilius White, talking to Dawn, and then I get a moment because the director, the artistic director was like, hey, can you do us a favor? Can you interview Phylicia Rashad? You don't have to if you don't want to. And I was like,
what do you mean?
What do you mean?
Yeah, I do have to. That's
not...
I was like, I'm already standing in front of her. Like, what are you talking about?
I'm like, put me in, coach. Let's do it. Let's go.
I didn't know that was an option. Yes, I will interview.
Exactly. So I'm going there and I'm like, okay, cool. Let me try and get this viral moment. And I'm like, I know people mess up my name all the time. Like people giving me Devon. And if someone says Davon, I'll take it, but it's Davon. But like people call me all wrong names. So I knew for her, people are always like Phylicia, all that. So I'm like, okay, we can connect on this. So I'm like, Phylicia, am I saying your name right? No, and I'm saying it right. She's like, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm already winning over, trying to warm up.
Yes.
Because again, you know, people are always in her face trying to grab something. And I'm just sitting here like, can I just do this job? I just want to do this job and get out. But I celebrate you and I honor you. So I'm like, hey, can I put my arm here? And she's like, oh, go for it. And I'm like, okay, cool. Just to create, you know, a little relationship. And I'm like, so what's the importance of people getting your name right? And she just knocked that question out of the park. Simple, sweet, the scarf queen, giving us everything we need. And that was a great moment. So from there, I end up doing some work over in Asia. And at this point, I'm not getting lost in the work, but I'm enjoying the fact that my living is saying some lines and getting paid for it.
Right, yeah.
And going over the world. So I'm enjoying it. I'm doing all that. And I really did lose the activist part of me. In doing the work. Like, yes, I would do the teaching artist stuff and all that, but for example, when I was in Asia, the Freddie Gray thing took place and I was ghostwriting a lot for people who were there. And part of it for me was, I can do this writing and that won't hurt my career because I'm not the face of it. I'm not the face. And it always sat in my heart like, oh, that's a little cowardly, knowing what I can do. But I was like, you know what? It is what it is. I'm trying to promote this career so that I can come back and help students in the future. This is what this is about. Eye on the prize.
Right.
And then after George Floyd, man, I was just like, you know what? Put my face up there. It's not worth it. I want to do this. I want to do it in every way that I can. And the first stop was Actors Equity. So when I got that call from my friend being like, yo, what are you doing? And stuff like that, I was like, wow, that's the thought. Like there are so many people out here who could be making a difference, but it's all about self-preservation. So for me, I got deeper back into it and was comfortable with my face because I wanted to show people down the line that you too can be active. You too can be boisterous about injustices, but as long as you have a kind heart, as long as you're doing it from a place that isn't performative, you'll survive. Dare I say you might even thrive. So that's the bet. That's the bet.
Yes. And you know, I used to get into like full arguments with people in college my like friends are like, they're like, oh, like Nick, you are not politically active enough. Like, you don't want. But I was like, it's not that I'm not politically active. It's I'm so politically active that I know that what's happening is complete bullshit, and so we need to like talk about other ways to fix this. And I really think that what I'm doing is going to be the way that at least I fix it. I'm going to have a way into these conversations, into changing the world through the work that I am creating. And it's a more accessible work. It's work that everyone wants to be involved in. Like, I can make a thing that would make hopefully have people actually have conversations. That's at least what we say we're doing. And
Yes.
so it only makes sense that I would further use this and have a voice. I mean, it's like the argument that people have when they're like, oh, the award show was far too political. Like all those actors had opinions and it was very unfortunate. Now, do I feel like some of it is very like chauvinistic and like I should say a statement because I'm here? Yes. But it's this idea that artists or like the people that entertain you are not allowed to, like I said, be human, to have an actual opinion, to live in the world where that pain that you saw someone do on stage, yeah, that can happen in my life too. Like that time when I cried in that movie, newsflash, I also cry in my real life. Like I'm a person. So
Well, it's tricky because like life is political. Like Soul Plane is political. Soul
yes,
Plane is an all black movie. You don't think that's political? It's funny, it's hilarious, but that's what being an artist is. An artist is making a statement. A statement is political. Breathing for a black person is political, like, to its simplest form. So this idea of I just want to be neutral and stuff like that, that's performative, that's self-preservation. I reject it.
yeah. And I've always said I've never been afraid to burn a bridge. I've never been afraid because my thing is, if most of the reasons why I would ever burn a bridge are probably because you did something so egregious that I really don't want to walk on that bridge anyway. And so like the reason I came in here was to probably burn your house down to start off with, but whatever. We'll talk about that later. But like I have always stood firm in the fact that I'm like, no, if you want to fire me or you don't want to hire me because I was seeking a safe, equitable, and just space for everyone involved in the art making process, then I don't want to be hired by you.
Exactly.
And I'm probably going to quit before you have the chance to fire me anyway.
Exactly.
So that's just, that's yes. So thank you for standing in your artivist truth because it's important.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Davon, what do you think is going to happen next? It seems that Cuomo is going to try and open these theaters back up in New York with limited whatever. I'm currently in Nebraska where people are doing things like there are shows happening, people in masks going seeing theater, social distance, like it is starting to happen in ways. So what in your opinion, what do you see rolling next and how soon?
For anyone that says like, why do we need this? I just want to bring some numbers to your show real quick. When it comes to the art sector before COVID, we made up 877 billion of the economy. That's 4.5 of the economy. That is over 5 million jobs. So what does that mean? When it comes to transportation, we got them beat. When it comes to farming, we got them beat. We got them beat together. When it comes to transportation, the 45th president of the United States thought it was a good idea to bail out 10 airlines. Give relief to 10 airlines that cannot possibly make what we make when it comes to GDP. But when it came to the arts, they said, we don't care. And that's something that they don't really understand. We are an economic driver. We're not a stabilizer. We're beyond that. We are a driver. So when you really break those numbers down, I'll even dare say those numbers recorded are a little too low. Because if there aren't Broadway shows, who's parking in those parking lots in New York? If there aren't Broadway shows, who's going to those restaurants?
It's that stuff. It's that stuff that no one thinks about. And when you say entertainment, like so much falls under that hub. Like and people just don't realize that like when you're saying, oh, that doesn't matter, you're saying no to a bunch of other things. Sorry, not to cut you off, but that's just
No, I'm just happy we're on the same page. So that's
Mhm.
essentially it. That to me is very important. So do we need to launch this thing again and get it up and running? Yes. But the issue is safety.
Mhm.
How do we keep it safe? And that is the big question. And that's what everyone's been knocking their head up against the wall trying to figure out. And what gets me is that when it comes to situations like this, if you look at 9/11, if you look at the recession, if you look at the Great Depression, this is the moment when the arts thrive the most. Right now, Netflix is having gains that they've never seen before. Right now, you have the rise of TikTok. So what I'm saying is that if it's now February, Black History Month 2021, and theater still hasn't found a creative way to come back, I question if it's relevant. And
Come on.
that's a very awful thing to say, but if this platform can't be transformative and we still don't know how to navigate that and figure that out, and we're still in a static situation, I question it. One of the things that if I had the money, and I'm just throwing this out here because someone needs to do it. You know what I love doing in New York? Going to Macy's and window shopping, because they have these beautiful displays. And I thought, that's a show. You could literally put that glass up and people can walk through and see that. That's a moving museum, and it doesn't really act as a super spreader event. That's something we're talking about right now on your show. You mean to tell me one producer couldn't figure that out? There's a show called Sleep No More. You couldn't put glass between that and figure that out? That's an immersive experience that you could have just put some pixie glass in between. If they can do it in supermarkets, you could do it for your show. So I really challenge the creativity of our producers. I challenge the creativity of our actors, our directors, our choreographers. There's still a window for us to prove why we are the first of the art creations theater. So yeah, I really look at our leaders and I go,
Davon! Okay, listen, because yes, I have been saying this on this show since its inception, because I'm like, we are artists. We are an innovative people. We should know how to innovate and shift and move. And I think the quote that I've said on the show a number of times is I was very disappointed in my community for falling into this place of, we can't, so we'll wait until we can. Like, I was like, what? I was like, don't we do this? Like, don't we create? Don't we tell stories? The goal of this is to tell stories, like, and to unite people through storytelling. Right now, your audience is larger than it will ever be. Right now, all the people that were never willing to come to your show will come to your show. Like, yes. So, wow, you just made me feel like I'm not crazy for the last. I mean, people were slightly agreeing with me, but really, there is like this pushback of like, oh well, it's just not the same. It's just not what we do. And I'm like, no, what we do is tell stories. What we do is unite people through a common story line of something. Like, we don't need a stage and lights and costumes and people sitting and coughing and eating snacks, like, to do theater. Like, that's not what the art form is. That is what the industry has made it, but that is not what the only thing that we need to be seeking in our art making. So yes,
thank you.
Listen, we've said all the things for all the people. This has been amazing. It's been so wonderful to talk to you. I've been a fan of all of your work, and I am so happy that we finally got a chance to chat about it and to show people that it's possible to show your face and make a change and be very successful.
Well, that's the bet. Now, if no one hires me once everything's open,
Nick,
Nick, you better delete your show. No, I'm just...
Well, listen, if they don't hire us after when they're open, then they're just racist. All right, thank you so much for being here.